Thank you for doing this. So the similarities between the U.S. and Great Britain are very obvious, often remarked upon. But the one I notice the most is whenever you talk to people here, they say exactly what people in the U.S. say, which is nothing changes. It doesn't matter if you vote for Boris Johnson or Rishi Sunak or Keir Starmer, different parties, Tory, Labour, same result. What is that?
Well, I think, Tucker, it's our democracy has gone badly wrong. So what happened is we are the mother of all parliaments, and we effectively were the genesis of true democracy. I mean, yes. Forget the Greeks for now, but let's just say we are modern democracy.
Democracy at scale. Athenian democracy was tiny.
Yeah, but this is democracy at scale. So they had the right concept, I think, and there's some great philosophers from that era. But I think our parliament was structured so that you had MPs elected by the people, and they were effectively the people's representatives. So the job of parliament was ultimately to put the interests of the British nation first, make decisions that was, first of all, and above everything else, in the interests of the nation. But at the same time, there were internal rivalries about regional competition between each of those MPs to try and do the best for their constituency as well. But most of them were in some way invested in Britain. They were landowners, they were businessmen, they were peers, they were aristocrats. They actually had a big shareholding, if you like, in UK PLC. And, I look at prime ministers like Lord Salisbury, and I look at, men who made great decisions. And obviously we can talk about Churchill, we can talk about the great leaders, Maggie Thatcher, who I loved. We can talk about great leaders, but I think what's gone badly wrong, and this is why I've set up a movement, not a party, to unite common sense thought and to allow those people who share the view you've just outlined, that it doesn't matter who you vote for, the smorgasbord of opportunities that you've got at the moment, whether it's the Tories, whether it's Labour, whether it's the Lib Dems, whether it's the Greens, whether it's the Scottish National Party, whoever, they're all part of this dying sort of remnant of what was Parliament. So I think we've got to have some form of, what in geological terms, rejuvenation and uplift to change the way in which we're governed and make sure that we re-empower the MPs, the elected representatives of the people, and we disempower the people who run Parliament, the quangos, the unelected civil servants, who are largely represented by the permanent secretaries, many of whom I now see on the Public Accounts Committee. The country, Tucker, is just run by people who don't know which way is up. So we've got a dying body of productive Brits who I have the greatest admiration for, who really fight all this regulation, this red tape, all of the oppression of government, of licensing, of regulations, of rules. They fight their way through all this, not to mention huge taxes, which will probably increase dramatically tomorrow, in order to basically debit the productive and credit the indolent, the most extraordinary sort of formula which is doomed to failure. But so I think we need the people who ultimately care about the country to rise up now. I don't think the way in which our government is structured is ever going to serve them well. So all they will do is go around crying into their beer about the fact that they voted for, as you say, Rishi Sunak, or they voted for Keir Starmer, and they're all the same. There's no real difference.
I don't think you're overstating it. I mean, look at their priorities. They're both totally I'm an outsider, but I'm just watching this from thousands of miles away, but they seem totally disconnected from the actual country. What happens here, what it's like, what it looks like, who lives here. They don't seem interested at all.
Well, I think what's happened is Parliament, as I say, whereas it was elected by the people and its interests were aligned with the people, now Parliament and the MPs, an MP earns about £92,000 a year, something like that. I actually give my salary to charity each month. I give it to a great Yarmouth charity. But I think a lot of the MPs need that money, so they've become dependent on that. They've obviously got status as an MP. There's a lot of talk goes on in Parliament. There's a lot of sort of, video calls and meetings in Room P and, You know, all sorts of stuff goes on and people feel important, but actually, are they delivering for the people? I would argue they're not. So I think we've got to have some form of massive change. And I watch what's happening in the US, and I think we need some help from the US. I think what's happening with Donald Trump and with J.D. Vance and with Rubio. I mean, you've got some great people who are really trying to change the way things are going. I think I blame you partly for infecting us with this DEI nonsense and all the other stuff that is seeping into the veins of Britain. But I think you've realized that that's not the way forward. That's not how we're going to get the quality of life and the common sense and the logic and the fairness that we used to have. We've got to expunge all that. And the only way we're going to do that is by very strong people standing up and actually affecting change. And I reflect on the US a lot because, as you probably know, that there was a man called John Lambert who played a part in the Civil War. Oliver Cromwell's one of my great historical heroes.
Your Civil War.
In the British Civil War. Yeah. And he and Henry Arton, when Cromwell won the Civil War, he always said, if I lose one battle, I lose my head. The king can lose 100 battles and he keeps his. Well, he didn't fortunately lose a battle and he won the Civil War. And then they had to work out how to govern. And this guy, John Lambert and Henry Arton, wrote this thing, this paper, which ultimately guided, it was called the Instrument of Power. And its job was to effectively separate the powers that Cromwell was going to have as Lord Protector and put in the checks and balances, which is what you need in any form of democracy, proper checks and balances that controls any sort of aggregation of power, which can be damaging. You need some power, but you don't want anybody to become omnipotent. And this was an incredible piece of work, which was then used in our Bill of Rights, and then some of it was lifted by your founding fathers, Jefferson, Madison, Adams, and Jay, who effectively played a big part in writing the US Constitution, which is the best, I think, attempt at setting out a sort of code for governance, which always returned power to the individual states and to the individual, because it's always the individual who gets oppressed by the state. And here we've got a state that now accounts for 50% of our GDP. We've got, as I say, all these quangos, unaccountable people who are doing things which are damaging the interests of Britain, aggregating money and influence to themselves, but damaging the interests of those people they're supposed to be serving. You know, they're called civil servants for a reason. That's their job.
One of maybe the biggest factors scrambling every one of these calculations and eliminating the historical knowledge that you just displayed is mass migration. This is very true in the United States as well. It's not just here, it's throughout the West. But what is that? That is the one thing that I notice as a foreigner coming here that does not change regardless of who's in power, is this constant churn in population, millions of new people. There's never been any indication that Native Britons want that. No Native Americans, no one in the United States wants that. We've gotten it anyway. In my country, they used to say, we need to do this for economic reasons. We need the labor. They don't say that anymore. No one explains why this is happening. Why is it happening here? What's your guess?
Well, I think the essence of immigration is that targeted immigration is good. So if you have a leadership of the country that can identify where skills are short,
right,
and you can actually attract people who've got those skills, who are going to contribute to the economy. And actually,
we have no dentists. Let's import some dentists.
Exactly. But you need to have a leadership who's capable of identifying where the shortages are, and that's good immigration. It's targeted. It's small, and it basically improves the standard of living and the quality of life for the people in the country.
Is that happening here now?
No, I was just going to go on to say that what's happened here is it's actually been turned on its head. So what we're doing is we are allowing millions or hundreds of thousands of illegal migrants from different cultures to arrive by boat. And really, since the war, we've also brought in lots of legal migrants who have, in some cases, contributed, but in many cases, they still haven't integrated into what Britain is and what, we are a Christian country, we have our history, we have our roots, and now we've got sort of pools of of people from a different culture with a different belief and a different sort of outlook on life. And that's getting worse. So we are now, and you're seeing this, we're now seeing our best people leaving Britain. So the rainmakers are leaving in huge numbers now. The non-dons who used to be here are now have been taxed, and they're leaving. They don't have to be here. As you know, in the modern world, you can basically do a job from almost anywhere in the world. And what you have to do is create the conditions where people want to live somewhere. And 10, 15, 20 years ago, everybody wanted to be in London. You know, when I was young, London was the place to be because it was deregulated, it was fun, people actually could generate wealth. You didn't have too much oppressive regulation and statism. And gradually it's been strangled a bit like Gulliver. So I think a lot of people, and a lot of my friends are leaving. They're going to live in Dubai, they're going to live in Milan, they're going to live in
Montenegro.
Could be Montenegro, it could be almost Mauritius, it could be almost anywhere. We just sent a whole load of English money out to Mauritius. I mean, they're getting tax cuts out there. So, we've given the Chagos Islands away when we didn't need to. We've sort of, I think, perpetrated.
Mauritius is an island in the Indian Ocean, far, far, far away.
Mauritius is an island in the Indian Ocean, but the Chagos Islands, basically a lot of Chagosians live in Crawley here. And they didn't want they didn't want to be part of Mauritius. And what's happened is Keir Starmer and Herma and Philippe Sands, this sort of bunch of human rights lawyers, you may or may not know the history. We actually paid Mauritius some money in 1963 when we gave her independence, so that she had no claim on the Chagos Islands. Arguably the Seychelles and the Maldives have a bigger claim on the Chagos Islands that are 1,300 kilometers away from Mauritius. But these human rights lawyers have indulged their fantasies, and at the expense of the British taxpayer. I mean, we don't quite know what the number is. It's somewhere between 18 and 30 billion over the next 90 years. We've literally handed that to Mauritius, who've now given a tax cut to their citizens on the back of it.
Have you committed a lot of atrocities in Mauritius?
No.
Why would you owe them billions of dollars?
It's all about the Diego Garcia base.
I know the actual story.
But the Chagosians, a lot of them live in Crawley here. So, they didn't want the deal to happen. They basically don't like the Mauritians.
But if you take 3 steps back, why would you do that? You would only do that if you hate yourself. There's no potential for gain at all for you, your children, your country. What is that?
Well, I think a lot of them do dislike what Britain was. I think they have this sort of hatred of colonial Britain, which, I mean, if you have a hatred of any form of colonialism, you have to have a hatred of the Belgian a sort of colonization of the Congo,
the Zulu Empire, or
even France's occupation of North Africa. So,
they occupy Africa to this day.
They do. No, they do. They do. Yeah, absolutely. But I think Britain may have done some things that weren't great, but on the whole, we've, I think, been a force for good. We've left, sound legal systems in India. We've done good things, not bad things. We voluntarily ended the slave trade. We actually cost us a lot of money. The British Navy was used to police the cessation of the slave trade. So I feel very proud of Britain. I love Britain, and I think these people, these human rights lawyers, I actually despise them, Tucker. I think they're the enemy of Britain, and I don't understand what motivates them.
Well, so that's it. It's clearly not a hatred of colonialism, because Africa has been colonized at a scale never before seen by China. And they won't say a single word about that. I mean, colonialism will never end. The weak dominating the strong is just a feature of life. It's sad, but that's what it is. They're not mad about that. They're only mad about the West.
Well, in the end, history will tell you that we always return to realpolitik. And realpolitik is basically power ultimately dictates what happens.
Of course.
And as you say, that's happening. China is very cleverly positioning herself, in countries which are struggling for money, obviously in Africa. I mean, her tentacles are going almost everywhere. And, I think China, in a way, is an extraordinary economy, because you've got this extraordinary relationship between communism and their capitalism, which Deng tried to introduce, which has generated a sort of class of people and the Chinese are enterprising people who have generated wealth. But then, you've also got this communist bloc, and I visited when I was chairman of Southampton, I visited Qingdao, where Southampton's twinned with Qingdao. And it's an extraordinary sort of relationship. So very much the capitalist is effectively in hoc to the communists. So they control everything. And if you look at what happened to Jack Ma, I mean, he built an incredibly successful business in Alibaba. So I think that their blend of communism and capitalism, which if you dig deep, all their state-owned enterprises are incredibly indebted and almost bankrupt. So I don't think her model is sustainable. Meanwhile, she's generated huge amounts of foreign exchange from effectively, if you like, she's undercut a lot of the Western capitalists in solar panels and in other things, and she's running huge trade surpluses, even if internally her finances aren't great. So I don't think her model is a sound model. I think she is actually quite a dangerous influence. She I think, bears a very long memory. She never forgets what's been done to her in the past. And I read an interesting book the other day by Colin Thubron called The Amur River. I don't know if you've read about the Amur River. It runs through Mongolia. And it's the history of the relationship between Russia and China. It's a very good book to read, but she never forgets when people breach treaties. It may not happen tomorrow, but it's logged, and she remembers.
Sell opium to her.
And we've done a few things. We've done a few things that she won't have liked historically. So I think we've got to be very wary of China. I'm in favor of basically liberating what I see as one of the best and most creative economies in the world, which is Britain. And if we can cut away all of the regulations, I mean, when I was young and I worked in the city, London was almost the primary center. We had the Eurobond market. We had a hugely powerful stock market. You know, we were raising money for people all over the world. Everybody wanted to be in London. Gradually, the regulatory, and again, you have to blame Tony Blair for a lot of this stuff. A lot of the regulatory legislation, it was called the Financial Services Market Act of 2000, that basically tied the city down, and it started this over-regulation, which has meant that London is now a shadow of its former self. So we don't have a position. I mean, NASDAQ has flown on the back of London's failure. You still have a much more capitalistic approach to your financial markets. Ours are now so regulated that they've become arguably more interested in protecting the value of people's pensions than they have in matching risk capital with entrepreneurs, which is what they should be doing.
They feminized your finance. No, I've watched. But what does that mean? So what is the British economy now?
Well, I think the British economy is in pretty bad shape. I mean,
I don't even know what it is. I mean, I thought it was manufacturing, obviously, the greatest manufacturing power in the world and the greatest goods in the world. Still, like 100 years later, that's remarkable how well they're made.
Well, it's a service industry, a lot of it, as you know.
Okay,
and Jimmy Goldsmith talked about this. I mean, Jimmy Goldsmith, great man. He saved the pound through the referendum party, where the parties promised. He doesn't ever get enough credit for it. So he spoke very well about this, and it was happening in the 90s, really, when we were outsourcing our manufacturing to cheap labor countries. And he forecast what would happen, which is that we would become a dependency culture rather than a culture of innovation. Because actually, when you've got your factories in different parts of the world, it's there that the innovation takes place.
Yes.
It doesn't take place in the consuming nations. So I think what's happened is we've gradually been party, or our leaders have, to closing down our economy, damaging the interests of the British people. But the British people are still incredibly creative. I have every faith in their ability if they're cut free. But they've got to be cut free pretty quickly, Tucker. I mean, our view is that if we haven't done it by 29, it could be too late.
But you don't have an election until 29.
There's not much time. There's not much time.
Well, it certainly feels that. And they're continuing, by the way, to change the population dramatically every year. So, like, the calculation changes every year, as does the culture, et cetera. But I don't think you have an election. I think Labour's in charge until 29, unless I'm missing.
Labour's in charge till 29, but I think the Achilles heel there possibly is the economy. So you talked about what is the British economy. The British economy is, as you know, as the American economy was, relied on something I hate called quantitative easing, which is basically getting high on your own supply, as I call it. It's basically what third world dictators used to do shortly before their currencies descended into chaos. But because you've got this sort of manufacturing taking place in one part of the world and the consumption in another part of the world, they've been able to get away with it so far, but it's still further hollowed out productive Britain. So I'm very worried about our level of debt. You know, we're looking at a level of debt of around 100% of our GDP. Our civil service pensions are off balance sheet, and there's another, we don't know the exact number, somewhere between 3 and 5 trillion, maybe a bit more, which is probably 200% of GDP. That's not even on the balance sheet. We have this accounting system called Oscar II, which I think is probably delusional in that it leaves off chunks of liability and probably enhances chunks of the asset side of the balance sheet. So I think we're delusional. I'm just waiting for our currency to collapse. And I think when you say there's not going to be an election till 29, we have the budget tomorrow where Rachel Reeves, who seems to believe that she can tax herself into wealth and prosperity, which nobody's ever done in history before. And I certainly...
Who's Rachel Reeves?
She's our Chancellor of the Exchequer.
What's her background? Pretty impressive person?
Well, she's Rachel from accounts or Rachel from complaints, or she told a few porkies about her CV, which she seems to have got away with that, as did a number of other Labour MPs. Apparently it's okay to embellish your CV these days, and nobody seems to care.
But you're not aware of any material accomplishments in her past?
Very, very few. I mean, she's not qualified to be doing what she's doing, but she's incredibly arrogant, I think. There's a blend of arrogance and ignorance, which is always dangerous.
We have that in our country.
So I think that the Achilles heel is if the economy starts to really go into reverse, which I think from my businesses we're beginning to see orders slow, the sort of carryover from the COVID money injections and from, you know, what the Tories did in their latter days, which kept the economy going to some extent, although Britain's growth has been sclerotic for a hell of a long time now.
Yeah.
So if we start to see a challenge to our ability to finance our deficits, and you probably saw, I mean, our deficit's just out of control. So, you know, it's going up every year. And in the end, if you have a deficit, you've got to finance it. So I always think the definition of credit is suspicion asleep. So in the end, people who borrow or fund our debt, buy our gilts, if you like, at the moment they demand a premium in terms of income over other people's debts, over the US debt or German debt. Right. So eventually what they do is they decide they don't want to buy that debt. And then you can't fund yourself. And then you have a funding crisis, a bit like we had in the mid-70s. And in those days, we went to the IMF and we got the IMF to bail us out. I'm not sure that the IMF would come and bail us out at the moment, because I don't think an economy which basically robs the productive to fund the indolent and to fund welfare, I don't think the IMF would put up with that.
Well, I'm confused. So you're describing a country on the very brink of bankruptcy, insolvency.
I think we're very close to it.
But you're still importing hundreds of thousands of people every year as asylum seekers, as if you're a global empire that can just like spend money with...
I don't call them asylum seekers because the majority of them aren't. They're economic migrants.
But whatever they are.
So that's a big difference.
Of course, but I don't even understand how... My country's insolvent also, so I'm not just speaking of Britain. But I don't understand how any...
France is probably worse than us if it's any consolation, Tucker, but I'm not really interested in a race to the bottom.
France is Europe's Mississippi. You can always point to them and say it's worse. But I don't understand how any country that's on the brink of not being able to serve its own people can decide to serve the world. I just don't get that.
Well, this is where we're delusional, because our own house isn't in order, and we spend our lives worrying about, you know, what's happening everywhere else, including sending vast amounts of money overseas in overseas aid. I mean, we're the countries that a lot of these people are coming from, we're sending them aid. I mean, Pakistan, for instance, I think we send 130 million pounds a year to Pakistan.
Why?
Just one example. You tell me. and a lot of the people are coming from Pakistan. So I think it's just the people in power. They get a kick like latter-day emperors who used to travel around the world dishing out sort of cash. I think it gives them a lot of pleasure to think that they are these important people dishing out money we haven't got.
Does anyone in London ever go to Switzerland in the winter to ski, or the south of France in the summer to relax? I know they do. Do they notice all the Ukrainians at the Hermes store using their money to buy handbags for 50 grand? Like, does anyone ever notice that?
I think people have noticed the Ukrainian money that's flowing into Monaco in particular.
Exactly.
So the number of Ukrainian registered Porsches in Porsches, Astons, whatever, in Monaco is massive.
But this is a country in the middle of a 4-year-long existential war. You would think people would be poor, but they're richer than ever. Not the people of Ukraine, but the people buying Aston Martins in Monaco and, spending $10,000 on dinner in Courchevel. That money is your money, my money. Does anyone care?
But you and I know that some people make a lot of money out of war. War works for some people.
But it's not usually funded by other people's taxpayer. Like, the war profiteers are a feature of every war, of course, but this is this kind of weird war where...
Well, I'm hoping, and it looks like there's some hope that there's been a breakthrough today on that front. I mean, I feel for the young men who are on both sides who
Definitely.
who are needlessly losing their lives, a bit like in our First World War.
Yes.
I lost relations in the First and Second World War, but I mean, those people, if they looked at Britain today or they looked at America today, would they be prepared to give their lives as they did so valiantly in the trenches in Europe and Gallipoli and other parts of the world? And many of them, some of them are American people.
As if you're a global empire that can just spend money with...
I don't call them asylum seekers because the majority of them aren't. They're economic migrants.
But whatever they are.
So that's a big difference.
Of course, but I don't even understand how... My country's insolvent also, so I'm not just speaking of Britain. But I don't understand how any...
France is probably worse than us if it's any consolation, Tucker, but I'm not really interested in a race to the bottom.
France is Europe's Mississippi. You can always point to them and say it's worse. But I don't understand how any country that's on the brink of not being able to serve its own people can decide to serve the world. I just don't get that.
Well, this is where we're delusional because our own house isn't in order and we spend our lives worrying about, what's happening everywhere else, including sending vast amounts of money overseas in overseas aid. I mean, we're the countries that a lot of these people are coming from, we're sending them aid. I mean, Pakistan, for instance, I think we send 130 million pounds a year to Pakistan.
Why?
Just one example. You tell me. And a lot of the people are coming from Pakistan. So I think it's just the people in power. They get a kick like latter-day emperors who used to travel around the world dishing out sort of cash. I think it gives them a lot of pleasure to think that they are these important people dishing out money we haven't got.
Does anyone in London ever go to Switzerland in the winter to ski, or the south of France in the summer to relax? I know they do. Do they notice all the Ukrainians at the Hermes store using their money to buy handbags for 50 grand? Like, does anyone ever notice that?
I think people have noticed the Ukrainian money that's flowing into Monaco in particular.
Exactly.
So the number of Ukrainian registered Porsches in Porsches, Astons, whatever, in Monaco is massive.
But this is a country in the middle of a 4-year-long existential war. You would think people would be poor, but they're richer than ever. Not the people of Ukraine, but the people buying Aston Martins in Monaco and spending $10,000 on dinner in Courchevel. That money is your money, my money. Does anyone care?
But you and I know that some people make a lot of money out of war. War works for some people.
But it's not usually funded by other people's taxpayer. Like, the war profiteers are a feature of every war, of course, but this is this kind of weird war where...
Well, I'm hoping, and it looks like there's some hope that there's been a breakthrough today on that front. I mean, I feel for the young men who are on both sides who
Definitely.
are needlessly losing their lives, a bit like in our First World War.
Yes.
I lost relations in the First and Second World War, but I mean, those people, if they looked at Britain today or they looked at America today, would they be prepared to give their lives as they did so valiantly in the trenches in the US, in Europe and Gallipoli and other parts of the world. And many of them, some of them were American people,
including relatives of mine.
Yeah.
Yes, I absolutely.
So would they feel comfortable? I'm not sure they would. And I think, I've always thought that an important element of what made certainly the US and the UK successful was this Protestant ethic, this ethic of working hard, of contributing, of being part of something which is basically driven in order to create a better community.
Yes.
And I think we've lost that ethic, and we've now lost sight of what we are. And somehow we've got to get that back. And if we don't get that back, I don't think the outlook is very optimistic. I think it's not going to be good news.
How do you get that back?
Well, we're trying with Restore Britain. We see a movement as being the key. So the only way to, I think, show the sclerotic, dying organs of power that they need to change what they're doing is for a mass movement to grow spontaneously, which we are seeing. I mean, our social media recently has gone stratospheric, and I think people can see that we are trying our best to highlight the deficiencies in Parliament. That's why it's so important to be in Parliament, because we're able to actually, from inside, expose exactly how deficient it all is. And then with social media, and thanks to Elon Musk, we actually have now got, I think, a far better, freer, more functional platform to get the message of what's happening out. And actually, as you know, transparency is the best cleanser of any system, a transparent sort of look at what's going on, which is why very often a lot of these administrations try and keep things as closed down as possible. I'm always a great believer in, if it's transparent and open, it usually functions a lot better. So, I mean, look, we haven't got long to do this, and I think the people, if they agree with us, need to now show that they agree and actually do something about it. And I say to my friends, that they've had life too good. They have leveraged off the back of the people who did fight in the war, who did create this post-war respect for the US, for the UK, for the winners, for the Anglo-Saxon alliance. And in that, I obviously include New Zealand and Australia and India to some extent, other parts of the world who fought for freedom. So I think we've got to stand up and be counted. I don't think we can all sit back and think it's going to be okay and it's somebody else's problem. It's going to be everybody's problem soon.
Some of what's happening here is so humiliating, and it's designed to be humiliating, taking migrants and giving them better lodging, better conditions than native-born Britons, many of whom are poor. That almost seems designed to infuriate people. It's too unfair. I wonder, does it stay peaceful, the response to that?
Well, you hope it stays peaceful and legal. But, we've seen, and again, in response to the migrants, of course they shouldn't be allowing these people. I mean, we're quite clear they should be detaining and they should be deporting all illegal migrants. They are economic migrants, in my view, not asylum seekers. They've traveled through safe countries. They have no reason to be here, and they should be detained and deported straight away. And I think then we turn our attention to people who've been brought here legally, who aren't contributing to the country. They also need to be looked at, and we need to decide how they work. And then we also need to look at the 9 million people of working age who aren't contributing to our society. They've been told it's okay to have mental health issues. It's okay to, stay at home, not work.
9 million non-working working
9 million people. And
so how could you justify
we also have these schemes like Motability. I mean, the whole country is basically a fraud if you look at it. So, these people get motor cars. I think I'm right in saying 13% of new car registrations is Motability, which basically
I'm ignorant of what you're saying. What is it?
Motability is like a sort of scheme. So if you tick enough boxes, you get a car paid for by the taxpayer, 3 named drivers, all the insurance, and every 3 years you change the car. I mean, the whole thing is complete nonsense.
You get a new car every 3 years?
Yeah, my friends buy old Motability vehicles when they've been used by these people who are on benefits. So no, I look, Tucker, there's a lot wrong, and we have to have a society. Britain voted for it. The British people voted in 2016, despite the fact the government going to be good news.
How do you get that back?
Well, we're trying with Restore Britain. We see a movement as being the key. So the only way to, I think, erotic, dying organs of power that they need that.
Well, I'm confused. So you're describing a country on the very brink of bankruptcy, insolvency.
I think we're very close to it.
But you're still importing hundreds of thousands of... Some of what's happening here is so humiliating, and it's designed to be humiliating, taking migrants and giving them better lodging, better conditions than native-born Britons, many of whom are poor. That almost seems designed to infuriate people. It's too unfair. I wonder, does it stay peaceful, the response to that?
Well, you hope it stays peaceful and legal. But, you know, we've seen, and again, in response to the migrants, of course they shouldn't be allowing these people. I mean, we're quite clear they should be detaining and they should be deporting all illegal migrants. They are economic migrants, in my view, not asylum seekers. They've traveled through safe countries. They have no reason to be here, and they should be detained and deported straight away. And I think then we turn our attention to people who've been brought here legally, who aren't contributing to the country. They also need to be looked at, and we need to decide how they work. And then we also need to look at the 9 million people of working age who aren't contributing to our society. You know, they've been told it's okay to have mental health issues. It's okay to, you know, stay at home, not work.
9 million non-working working
9 million people. And
so how could you justify
we also have these schemes like Multiculturalism. I mean, the whole country is basically a fraud if you look at it. So, you know, these people get motor cars. I think I'm right in saying 13% of new car registrations is Multiculturalism, which basically
I'm ignorant of what you're saying. What is it?
Multiculturalism is like a sort of scheme. So if you tick enough boxes, you get a car paid for by the taxpayer, 3 named drivers, all the insurance, and every 3 years you change the car. I mean, the whole thing is complete nonsense.
You get a new car every 3 years?
Yeah, my friends buy old Multiculturalism vehicles when they've been used by these people who are on benefits. So no, I look, Tucker, there's a lot wrong, and we have to have a society. Britain voted for it. The British people voted in 2016, despite the fact the government advised them not to, but they voted to take back their sovereignty from the European Union. They voted for a British nation state, right? A nation state's job is to protect the interests of its electorate, its taxpayers, its people who live here, who have contributed historically, who basically fill in their tax reform, write the check, work every hour God gives, try and bring their families up, and try and lead good lives. That's what we should be rewarding. We should not be rewarding an indolent, lazy culture. But as you probably know, the socialist sort of view of life often benefits from a dependency culture, because the people who are on dependency tend to vote for more dependency. And this is why I think, you know, the danger in the budget tomorrow is that Rachel Reeves does lift the two-child cap. So at the moment, you know, if you're on benefits, there's a 2-child cap for benefits. She's intending to lift that, and she's then intending to raise the taxes on productive Britain, who can't afford to probably have more than 2 children, so they can pay for people who aren't working, who want to have more than 2 children. So the whole thing is completely arse about face, and I don't know how long it can go on before people do lose their temper. Hopefully they will join Restore Britain and give us the platform to be able to lobby for change and to effect change now. I don't think we've got time to wait. And I do think if the economic conditions turn down very badly, we will be forced into an election at some stage, and it may be before 29. That's the Achilles heel on the election.
Where's the fierce island spirit that allowed Britons to rule the world?
Well, that is a very good question.
I'm not being mean. I'm just being
No, I think sincere. It's a very fair question, and I wonder. I mean, has everybody had life too good? Are they prepared to stir their stumps and actually contribute? Because there's no way that a few valiant people are going to be able to deliver this. This has to be a mass movement of entirely, it has to be a spontaneous movement. I think it is happening. I think it's beginning. I think we can see through our social media, we can see that people are concerned. And I don't think it's a big jump from being concerned to actually doing something about it.
But how can your average Briton allow its government to arrest people for saying naughty words on social media? Thousands of people every year, thousands. How can they allow that? Why don't they surround Parliament, like lift it off its foundations or something? Seriously.
Well, as you and I know, free speech is the absolute key to a functioning democracy.
You created it.
We created
This country created free speech.
And it's so important to everything. And we recently had a debate in Parliament, because with our membership now, in Parliament you can have a debate or force a debate in Westminster Hall with 100,000 signatures on an e-petition. So to your point, there's the best example of this is probably Lucy Connolly, who was caught up in the Southport, in the whole sort of emotional upheaval of the Southport killings, where three young girls were stabbed to death, and I think the country spontaneously reacted. Let Labour say it was some sort of right-wing planned.
Only right-wingers object to kids being killed.
It's not. It was a spontaneous reaction across the country. So Lucy Connolly posted something ill-advised, but arguably, she deleted it 3 hours later, obviously after the heat had gone out of it.
She said that the people who did this came from a migrant hostel.
But she went to prison for 30 weeks, I think it was. Was it 30 weeks? I think something like that. A bit more than that, a bit more. So she came. We hosted her in Parliament.
Did she harm anybody?
No. I get death threats, Tucker, and we report it to the police. I think I've had 8 death threats in the last 3 months. And we report it to the Metropolitan Police, and the square root of nothing happens. So I would have thought people making death threats is far more dangerous than people posting something in the heat of the moment on social media that they then redact.
But you're a member of Parliament.
I'm a member of Parliament. Yeah.
And you get death threats, and
we get death threats on social media.
But they took your guns away?
Well, that was because Reform, for some extraordinary reason, politically assassinated me and made some false witness statements that I had. Mohammed Ziauddin Yusuf said that I had threatened him in a meeting, which was palpable rubbish, and that I stood over him and I threatened to hit him. Well, I'm 68 and he's 38, so that's a bad idea to start with, and it just didn't happen like that. So, at the end of the day, we had a debate about Great Yarmouth and my branch office in Great Yarmouth, no more, and the WhatsApp chain proved it. But he gave this witness statement, and then Lee Anderson gave a witness statement to say that I was going around Parliament saying I was a very fine shot and I was going to shoot Zia Yusuf. Well, as a result of which the Metropolitan Police arrived mob-handed and took my guns away. And it took me about 5 months to get them back. So, look, and they also suggested I had early onset dementia, which was, again, pretty unpleasant thing to do.
Do they have any evidence?
I don't think I've got early onset dementia, not that I'm aware, but I obviously, those people who do have it, it's a pretty horrific thing to have.
Oh, of course it is.
And if I did have it and they'd said that, it would have been even more unpleasant. So, I hope I haven't got it. I hope I haven't got it, Tucker. But, anyway, so we again, fortunately, I'm able to fund the legal costs required. I was able to go on the attack. And I think, what they did was just morally and in every other way wrong.
But this country, its authorities can just show up and take your guns without producing a conviction, putting you on trial, proving you did anything wrong. They can
this country is going badly wrong. I mean, it is going badly wrong. But I think that's probably a symptom of the fact, we've lost our way. People aren't as principled as they used to be, and ultimately, it's a function of statism. I mean, it used to happen in the Soviet Union when you get. Right. When you get central planning and you get Stasi-like behavior,
yes,
you get little people making malign decisions behind closed doors and damaging the interests of the good people. So I always say in Russia, when the USSR, that the qualification you needed to best survive was to be a very good liar.
Yes.
And I think as a result of that, your entire fabric of your society starts to fall apart, which is what happened with them. Nobody takes any responsibility, and then, what was it, a generation and a half later, the whole thing imploded. But on the way, a lot of people died, and a lot of people had a, pretty hellish life. Not least one of my favorite characters, Alexander Solzhenitsyn.
Yes.
Who I think made some very, meaningful comment about sort of people being free and equal and equal and free, or not equal and not free, whichever way you want to look at it. So he made some great comments. So
he certainly did.
I think we are suffering from too much central planning, too much statism, and too many small people in positions of influence.
Last question. I look at what's happening in Ireland, and I know complicated relationship between the two countries, but what's happening to Ireland with mass migration is basically identical to what's happening here in Great Britain. And it's also happening in Australia and Canada and the US. It's so close, like almost precise. It's the same template. That cannot be what is that? What are the forces pushing that?
Well, I think we have to ask ourselves, why did the post-war elite think that this experiment with multiculturalism was a good idea?
Yes.
And I don't think any of them have ever really answered that question. I think, obviously, Ireland is a function of what's happening here. I mean, you've obviously got the wretched Northern Ireland Protocol, which morphed into the Windsor Agreement, which is shocking division of the United Kingdom, which effectively was if you like, sacrificed on the altar of Brexit. But on the multiculturalism, and again, this goes to, you probably know we've got a big...
Can I repeat what you just said? Because I think I want the question to hang in the air. Why did the post-war elite, I think I'm quoting you, decide that this multiculturalism experiment was a good idea?
I don't know. I think it's a thoroughly bad idea. I like
so obviously
nation states who interface with each other, who respect each other, who respect each other's culture, and who basically, interface with each other like that to try and create this. And again, does it go to the World Economic Forum? Is it the Bilderbergers? Is it the Council on Foreign Relations? Look, where does the truth lie? I mean, I find it, probably like you do, incredibly difficult to work out where the truth lies often in our modern age. Most people want to live a healthy life centered around their community and their family, and they want to, be able to wake up in the morning and feel that they've done the right thing by everybody. But it does seem that there is this malign agenda to break down families, to break down communities, to create this multicultural world where, I guess, arguably a small global elite are able to exert undue influence on how everybody else leads their lives. That's the only solution I can come up with with my limited intellect, but it doesn't add up, does it? It doesn't make sense.
Honestly, it doesn't. And I remember hearing people 30 years ago hint that there was some multinational or pan-global conspiracy from the groups you just mentioned, and thinking this is obviously a mentally ill person talking. And now you just watch the accumulated evidence is overwhelming. This is not organic. It's not the product of democracy.
It's not in the interest of our country. It's not in the interest of your country.
And no one wants it.
It's not in the interest of Ireland, and none of the electorate want it. So
how are we getting it all at the same time?
Well, it's a very good question, Tucker. I just don't know the answer to that. But what I do know is the people who care about it happening need to now coalesce and actually start to show those people who are perpetrating this on us that they don't want it. And if that means that they get turfed out of power, that's what's got to happen. We've got to turf them out of power and make common sense prevail. It's common sense we're lacking everywhere. But I think there are, as I said, there are some signs that that in the US, people are beginning to address it and people are beginning to take action. But it's like walking through glue, isn't it? I mean, there's this malign power base that doesn't lie down very easily, and it's always there, waiting to pounce again.
Thank you very much, Rupert, for talking to me. That was great.
Pleasure.